Thank you for plugging into this Family Life News podcast, streaming issues-driven, family-focused news. And welcome back to another edition of Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to what's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Michael Geer with the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire with New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms. Michael, let's begin with you. Much has been made about this new mask requirement in Pennsylvania. You got to mask up even in the privacy of your own home due to spiking COVID cases. Of course, we're all taking this disease very seriously, Michael. But in your opinion, is this an overreach of the Wolf administration?
Well, I think it is, and it's making national news because it is an overreach just in terms of common sense and what people look at it. But I talked to our attorneys here at our Independence Law Center regarding the constitutionality of it, and although it's unlikely to be litigated, I don't think, because I don't think there's going to be enforcement of this suggestion or mandate from the Secretary of Health. But our attorneys would say it's unconstitutional and something that is well beyond the pale of what the government can mandate or require of people within their own homes.
Yeah, and then Governor Cuomo at that lively press conference this week, we'll talk more about that in a minute, Jason, but he basically doubled down and said and encouraged police officers to, if you see a home where there's 20 or so cars parked outside, go and tell them party's over. Now, the sheriffs say they're not going to be peeking in any windows Thanksgiving Day. Your thoughts on where the governor is and where law enforcement is on this enforcement issue in New York?
Well, this week we saw building inspectors in New York City that were literally steering with binoculars into buildings, taking pictures in Jewish communities, trying to document more people inside a home or a synagogue than they believe should be. But I'm with Michael on this. I think that these attempts to reach into the home to control the individual behavior is blatantly unconstitutional. And while the governor wants sheriffs to enforce that throughout the state, I do not believe those sheriffs are going to do so, which means we're also probably not going to see court action. I think this is another opportunity for the governor to use the bully pulpit, but he should be using it in a constitutional manner.
Yeah, one quick question back to you in that press conference, Jason. Governor Cuomo really getting into a shouting match with reporter Jimmy Vielkind, insisting that New York City schools would indeed be open, and less than an hour later, Mayor de Blasio shut them down. How can there be that much of a communication gap between the mayor of New York City and Governor Cuomo?
I don't think there is a communication gap. I think they're scorpions in a bottle. That's what's happening between New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Andrew Cuomo. There is a power struggle over who really is in charge. And while probably Bill de Blasio could not open the schools without the governor's permission, he certainly showed that he can close them without the governor's permission. And that is the authority battle that's going on right now.
Yeah. Michael, more post-election litigation this week in the Keystone State. Of course, next Tuesday is the deadline to certify the results. There was a hearing in Williamsport. What are the issues being argued by the Trump administration at this late hour?
Well, there are a number of issues that are being argued, but the one in the Middle District, which was argued actually kind of at the last minute by Rudy Giuliani, deals with the issue of the ballot watching, the ability for partisan ballot watchers, specifically the Republicans, to observe the ballot counting that was taking place in Philadelphia. Initially, they were shut out completely, and then there was a court order that said they could be in there. But even in that regard, they moved the machines and the counting away from the real visibility of the ballot counters. Other issues that are being litigated as well involve something related to equal protection issues, because in Democrat counties, the Democrat election officials were allowing ballots to be fixed, ones that were called sort of incomplete ballots, while in Republican counties they were not allowing that, and that raises equal protection questions.
Let's talk about the pandemic a little bit more, Jason. Governor Cuomo never met a vaccine he doesn't like. He wants sixth-grade girls to get the HPV vaccine, big proponent of mandatory measles shots. But when it comes to COVID-19 vaccine, not on board with that. Can you explain this posturing as we talk about 250,000 people dead from this disease? Why in the wide world of sports would he be opposed to a potentially life-saving vaccine here in New York?
Well, again, we mentioned with Mayor Bill de Blasio, scorpions in a bottle, and I think you see that also with President Donald Trump in Washington, D.C., to where there is a power struggle that is going on. And in this dynamic, the governor wants to assert that he is the leader in the COVID fight. And when you see things such as Operation Warp Speed that are bringing about these vaccines, that's a problem for the governor, who has tried to position himself as the national leader on this issue from a state executive position. And so I think that sooner or later, the governor's going to have to come around to realize that when the vaccine is approved and it's found to be safe, that people are going to want access to it.
Yeah.
And that's an issue that we're really just going to have to fight here in New York.
Well, history is made in Harrisburg, Michael, with the election. The first time a woman will serve as Senate Majority Leader. Who is Kim Ward? Where does she stand on the issues that are near and dear to your heart?
Well, Kim Ward is a Pennsylvania state senator who was elected from Westmoreland County, which is just east of the Pittsburgh area. She's in the midst of her third term, and for the most part, she is with us on the issues that we at Pennsylvania Family Institute and our supporters care about. She's very strong on the sanctity of life issue, has been good on the religious liberty and LGBT issues from our perspective as well. She would likely vote for expansion of gambling in Pennsylvania, which is not something that we endorse, but she's not a promoter of that issue. So we're happy with her elevation to that position, and we know that she'll be easy for us to work with.
Yeah, I think next November 28th, correct me if I'm wrong, November 28th, the deadline to certify the New York election results, but the dust is still yet to be settled with these absentee ballots, Jason. We have seen some races conceded. I saw the state Senate race between Leslie Danks Burke and Tom O'Mara has been settled. The John Kakko, Dana Bolter race has been settled, but there's others that are still up in the air. Brindisi Tenney has gotten real close. Any others that could upset that supermajority status in the state Senate? With these absentee ballots still in limbo, could some races still sway here at this late hour?
Yeah, they could. I mean, we're looking at Westchester County, for example. There was a much watched race between Rob Astorino and Peter Harcum, and that race is still being decided. And so there is still a chance that the Democrats can take the supermajority in the state Senate, and even in the congressional races. Looking at New York 22, that race is going to come down to probably less than 500 ballots between Claudia Tenney and Mr. Brindisi. Yeah. So that's a race to be watching as well.
November is National Adoption Awareness Month. I know, Michael, this is an issue that's near and dear to your heart. And this month, the U.S. Supreme Court heard a case out of your state pitting a faith-based foster care agency against the city of Philadelphia. Explain why our listeners need to be paying attention to this.
In shorthand, this case is called the Fulton case. It was argued before the Supreme Court the very day after Election Day on November 4th, and our attorneys from our Independence Law Center listened intently, and they were very excited about what they heard. At issue in the case is the city of Philadelphia has decided that the Catholic Social Services Adoption Agency and Foster Care Agency, which is the longest-serving agency in that city, can no longer do adoptions or placement for foster care because they will not place children in homes with same-sex couples. That's something that the Supreme Court heard that case because they recognize, at least the justices that were asking questions, Justice Barrett and others, saying this seems like religious bigotry. Yeah. And so we're hopeful for a good result in that because we think it is religious bigotry that the city of Philadelphia shut down the Catholic Social Services Adoption Agency.
Another big case at the U.S. Supreme Court may be flying under a lot of people's radar, but this is huge. Depending on what the court does, and these arguments are set for November 30th, Jason, it could determine whether New York loses 1 or 2 seats in Congress next year. Please explain what's going on here.
Yeah, there's a court case, as you mentioned, coming to the Supreme Court November 30th. And it's a question as to whether or not in the census is to be included information regarding people that are non-citizens or undocumented immigrants. And the status of what happens with that case will determine the number of congressional seats that New York has. And because we have such a high population of people who live here who are not citizens of the U.S., it is believed that we actually have more congressional positions than are represented by actual voters here in the state. And so whichever way that goes may determine whether or not we lose 1 or 2 of these congressional seats.
All right, so many issues, so little time, as we like to say. It's the fastest 10 minutes in radio. But if you have questions about the great work going on at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. You have a wonderful website, Michael, where folks can check you out. What is that, sir?
PAFamily.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in New York as well. Jason McGuire.
AlbanyUpdate.com.